We've all done introductions. I'll just give for the video. I'll just give a brief rundown of who I am. Sly Williams. I've been making games professionally for 15 years now. I've been involved with the MonoGame project for approximately 5 years now. I've been a core developer for the last 4 years. Brief start, what is MonoGame? It's a re-implementation of the Microsoft XNA framework. It originally started as a way to use XNA on non-Windows platforms. It was originally started to get, well, someone wanted to use XNA on their iPhone game. It's basically designed to be cross-platform. We're not exclusively non-Windows. We support every platform we can. Basically every platform that has a C# runtime on it. It's a clean room implementation, so we don't use or we don't look at any of the XNA code at all. It's basically re-implemented from the public API and public documentation. That's very important to protect yourself legally in terms of open source projects.
Was it important to verify that the behaviour was the same as XNA?
That's one of our main goals. We have a large test suite that we run on XNA, and we also run on MonoGame and verify that the behaviours are the same. If there's anything we find that differs, that's classed as a bug, we'll go fix it. It's open source. Everything in it is open for anyone to use. It's free, and I've got a little note there say MonoGame is free. Some of the platforms you need a license for the C# runtime. For example, the mobile platforms, it uses Xamarin, so you need a Xamarin license to use MonoGame on iOS, Android, and PlayStation 4. It's on as well. It's under the very liberal Microsoft public license, so pretty much there's no restrictions on what you can do with it.
Can I ask, how did you choose the license? Is that something Microsoft wanted you to?
We didn't choose the license. Well, as in when I got involved with the project, it was already under the Microsoft public license, and that's just what the originator of the project chose. I don't know what the reasons were, but we're all happy with it. It's not a viral license. It doesn't.
Describe the one it's closest to, the known license that's most like it.
The known license.
Well, like something like a BSD or Apache, or is it more like a GPL or MPL?
It's not. It's probably as far from GPL as you could. GPL is a viral license.
Is it BSD is the most little? Which I think is
BSD and MIT are the common.
Yeah,
very frequent.
it'd be closest to those two, BSD and MIT.
Like, you can modify the code and publish something using the modified code.
Yep.
And not release it?
Absolutely. You don't even have to say it's using MonoGame.
Oh.
No attribution.
Right, so it's not even attribution. Right.
Basically, we don't want to place any limits on people using it. Although we found that most people are quite happy to say, we're using MonoGame for this. It's open sourced on GitHub, so we use the standard GitHub pull request procedure. So you clone the repo, make a branch, make your changes to that branch, send a pull request back to the main. A brief history, which I probably touched on a few points. It actually started out as XNA Touch, which was derived from the C# runtime at that point, was called MonoTouch. So that was started by a guy, Jose, back in 2009. The first release was for iPhone only, because that's what he wanted to release his game on. It was renamed to MonoGame in 2011 because it had gone well beyond just the iPhone platform. At that point, we'd added Android, Mac OS X, Linux, and Windows OpenGL. In 2012, Tom Spillman of Sickhead Games wanted to port his Windows Phone 7 games to Windows 8, and it was already built using XNA. He found MonoGame was the closest thing to what he needed to bring it over. He within a couple of weeks he'd added the Windows 8 support and DirectX 11 support, and he's also been instrumental in getting it onto PlayStation 4 and has ported several games over to that platform, which have regularly been in the top 10 sales on the PlayStation Store.
Have Sony and Apple been helpful, like in giving you support?
Sony have been very helpful in that they helped Tom getting onto PlayStation 4, as well as the negotiations with Xamarin to get the Mono runtime onto PlayStation 4.
Sorry, negotiations to get the do they own
license negotiations. The Mono runtime, it's under several licenses. The class libraries are free. The runtime is not.
Wow.
The runtime is under GPL, okay. But to have that on a closed system such as PlayStation 4, you need to not have it under GPL, which means licensing. And as I mentioned it earlier, at the Build conference, we did a simultaneous launch, and we've added Windows Universal apps to the library now. So that covers upcoming Windows 10, Windows Phone 10, and Xbox One in the apps partition. So you know how Xbox One has a couple of partitions. There's the game partition where games have full access to the resources, and there's an apps partition where apps have access to a limited amount. It's about, so if it's a certain amount of CPU, a certain amount of GPU that apps have access to. Universal apps will run in that apps partition, but still that's a big step ahead.
Are they all DirectX 11, or like the Universal apps?
DirectX 11 for now. They will have DirectX 12 as well, and that's what actually made it so easy, is that we're reusing all the same DirectX 11 code that we use for Windows 8 and Windows Desktop. That's driving the Windows Universal apps. Now I've got a showcase video here that was made last year using the games that were available then. There's been many more games made using MonoGame since then, and there are many more to come. We know of there's thousands of devs using MonoGame now, and I did have the video embedded in the presentation, but that's not working at the moment. So we'll Hi. Yeah. Okay, so one of the important things when you're using a library is not only to know what it can do, but what is it not trying to do. And one thing that MonoGame is not a game engine as such. It's a framework that allows you to access the graphics, audio, and media capabilities of the platform that you're targeting. It doesn't have any scene graph, any entity management, or any game content creation tools. All those tools could be built by using MonoGame, but that's not our aim. There are a lot of other people who are far better at creating those tools than we are, and it helps us to stay focused on what we can achieve rather than trying to grow too big and becoming an all-encompassing game engine. So the architecture of MonoGame, it's quite simply well, at its most basic, it's a set of .NET class libraries that you reference in your application. It can be used with any .NET language. It's primarily used with C#, but we've had people use F# and VB.NET. And whatever .NET languages come out in the future, it'll work with those as well. We use as much managed code in it as possible. There is some native code in there that actually is more difficult when you're dealing with cross-platform, because different platforms, different binary formats, using managed code as much as possible, it takes away a lot of those cross-platform issues. The content pipeline has more native code in it, but that's only designed to run on the desktop platforms, Windows, Linux, and Mac. So as part of the content pipeline is a large part of making a game and getting the assets into the game. That we've been using the XNA content pipeline on Windows for a long time, but it's only recently that we've removed that, and we have our own content pipeline from start to finish now. So that allows you to take your raw assets, it processes them into a platform-specific optimized format So for textures, that might be taking them to, compressing them to DXT, or on Android, there's several compressed formats that it supports, and the content pipeline takes care of those platform differences. We supply a standard set of importers, so most of the common file formats, the content pipeline can import those directly. Because it's fully open, you can add to those standard importers, or you can actually provide your own importer complete. So if you've got a specific file format, you can write an importer that will bring that into the MonoGame content pipeline. Building content, we have a command line tool that does the actual building, and that tool runs on all the desktop platforms. And to make it easier, we have a pipeline GUI that allows you to manage the what files go into the content project, the various properties on those files. So is this texture compressed? What quality compression does this sound have? And we've kept that as a separate tool to make it easier for large teams to use it. With XNA, the content pipeline was fully integrated into Visual Studio, so anyone who wanted to build content had to run it through Visual Studio. We've actually kept it separate so that artists don't have to have Visual Studio installed. They just have the MonoGame install on there, and they can build content for it. Yeah, so what I was going to do here is I was going to do a quick demo of porting an existing game, an existing XNA game over to a Windows Universal app. Minimize that. That's my mouse.
How many developers are currently working on MonoGame?
We've got 4 of the core team. 2 of those are myself and Tom actively working on it. And I've got a group of about 10 regular contributors to it. So there's a fairly fast pace.
They all forked it and did pull requests to contribute? Is that
Yes, that all changes that come into the game are via pull requests. We probably average about, it can be 2 a day, or sometimes it can be 10, 15 pull requests a day. We're moving to a monthly release cycle now, because it was getting too long, too many changes between releases. So we decided to iterate releases faster, so actually get a lot of the fixes and feature improvements out to users faster. Now, what I was going to do here, create a new project. I have the latest MonoGame installed on here, and we have a group of Visual Studio templates. So I will call this Platformer 2D. Creating the project. It can take a while. That's Visual Studio.
When you release, do you use like branches or something to kind of be able to sort of support all the releases that are still out there?
Yeah, all the pull requests get merged into a develop branch, and then when we go to do a release, we will merge the changes for that release across to a master branch, and then that's tagged. So yeah, we have a full history of releases.
Do you do any kind of beta releases to test before you release? Or?
We found we haven't had to really. We have so many people running off the develop branch that we generally find issues pretty quick. Okay. So the code I have for the platformer. So this is the project. This is from the MonoGame samples. So previously it supported all those platforms, Android, iOS, all the other platforms that MonoGame supports. I'm just going to do just going to bring those. The game source code. So the central class of a MonoGame project is a game class. So that's created by default by every project, and that's I think of it as the main function in your regular C program. So we'll paste the source code into there. We'll remove the standard game class that was included with that was created with the template. So it's basically an empty game class. I will bring in the game class from the
Just out of interest, with all the platforms you support, do you only support development on Windows, or can you actually develop on Mac and Linux?
You can develop on Mac and Linux.
I use Xamarin Studios.
Yeah, Xamarin Studio runs on.
You need to open Visual Studio Project. So.
Yeah, Xamarin Studio is fully compatible with Visual Studio projects.
Doesn't open Visual Studio C projects.
No.
Presumably soon you'll be using the multi-platform Visual Studio to do this kind of stuff anyway.
That's one thing that we want to try. So when it gets more feature rich, as in they add actual support for building while running C# apps, yeah, we'll definitely get it going.
Have you tried
It's just
Yeah, it is a community.
It's pretty much fine. You don't.
fine is a description. You wouldn't call it good, you'd call it fine.
I think because of Unity we're stuck on like a really old version.
Oh, okay.
It's really terrible.
It moves forward pretty regularly.
I mean, I've seen it got better since I've been using it.
Yeah,
I think you're probably on a newer version than
I would say so.
Okay, and we also have as part of the standard template, the MGCB file, which is the MonoGame content project file. Now, it may look like a whole lot of command line options, which it is actually treated as that internally. It's just treated as if it's a whole string of command line options to the command line tool.
Do you have anywhere like some sort of file that manages all the dependencies between the content, or
Dependencies between content?
Like, kind of like a make file or something? Like, how does it know when to build what parts of the content, or does it just build everything?
When it builds a content, it creates intermediate files, and there'll be metadata in there that shows it was built on at this date, this time, with this version of the content pipeline tools. So even if you change one of the content pipeline libraries, it'll know to rebuild the data, because what the changes in the library may have affected how that data is built.
I think what Ash was asking about was dependencies between content itself. Like, you'll build some particular piece of content and will depend on X, Y, and Z, and those might further depend on W, S, and T. And if you change T, then it's going to rebuild everything that changed.
Yeah, I think that support is in there. It knows that if this file changes, it needs to update these other files. Now I'll just bring across the content. So we've got a fairly standard set of content here. So background images, some fonts, just some simple text files to define the layout of the levels, overlays. So we'll bring that content into the project.
So you're bringing this in from a working XNA project, is that right?
Yes. Now, one thing that we also have is, if I go back to this content, there's an XNA content project there. We can actually import that and create the MonoGame content file from that XNA content project. So
is that like an XML file or something?
Yes. So.
And is the equivalent in MonoGame, is it also an XML file?
The MonoGame equivalent is, looks like that. It's just a stream of command line options.
So you list all your content files in there?
Yeah. So what I'll do now, I'll bring that one in there. I'll just rename it to content. And start up the, this is the pipeline GUI. So what I'll do is I will import the content project. So there we have all the background layers, and these are all the properties that you can set on a, so these are just textures, so we can set the type of importer and the processor, whether we generate maps, pre-multiply alpha, resize to a power of 2 if needed. That all happens inside the texture processor. So now we will save that. Now we can actually close that, because the Visual Studio project has support for building the content project when you build the project. So when you build the code, it'll rebuild any changed data. Now there's one other place I need to make a change, which we'll find during a build.
So is that like a custom pre-build or post-build step or something to build your content in Visual Studio?
It uses MS Build tasks, or it's a section in the project file.
And that's all free and open source now as well, isn't it?
MS Builders.
So
That's in fact that's what
Is that part of the
Visual Studio free version is going to use. It's supporting MS Build.
yep. So
They used to actually release MS Build with the Windows SDK separate to Visual Studio.
yeah,
Just get it installed with Windows.
it
You can use it just after you've installed Windows, can't you? Or is that?
no, it came with Visual Studio or the Windows SDK.
Because it sticks in somewhere in the Windows directory, doesn't it? Like possibly else.
So the only change we have to do here is the template was built with the game class called Game 1, and the platformer 2D demo has called the game class platformer game. So it's just two small places I have to change that. So now that should build. Build started.
So I've noticed Zamel mentioned in all of this code is
The Windows Universal project, it's built on top of a standard Zamel app type. So you can actually add Zamel controls on top of your MonoGame project. So that's needed if you want to include ads. They all use Zamel controls.
That's just a serialization format, right? It's not.
Yes.
Like, that's just like one small part of WPF. You don't get any of the other.
Yeah.
So it's WPF.
I think it's the serialization format that was with originally.
Yeah, Zamel is the file format that WPF saves its layouts in, and it's now used across Windows Store apps and Windows Universal apps use Zamel.
Okay. So it's not something that Mono developed?
No.
Okay. So Mono doesn't present those UIs?
So if you add a button over the top using Zamel on your app, I presume that's not being rendered, that's being rendered by the native platform, not
Yes.
by MonoGame?
Yes, correct.
And how's that go for performance? Can you get away with building
Lots of people have done it and used ads in their game that are Zamel controls displayed over the top of the MonoGame view. So now if we run this, it's a 40 meg application. It's running. We haven't specified a default splash screen. And we have the platformer sample there. So that took.
So this is a sample that comes with the XNA SDK?
This is a sample that was originally distributed with XNA. We ported it to, or brought it over to MonoGame samples to just show how easy it was to run on all the different platforms. And it's taken all of a couple of minutes while talking as well to bring it across to a Windows Universal app with no changes. So we'll there we go. We'll get back to. Away. Okay, so where is MonoGame going from here? So we've seen where it started, where it's at now. Where is it going? As I mentioned, we released Windows Universal App Support this week. It's been used on many titles on PlayStation 4. A lot of the titles shown in that video were actually were on PlayStation 4 now. Universal App Support gets us onto Xbox One as an app. So when Microsoft allow people to start deploying their Universal apps to Xbox One, I'm sure we'll get a lot of people using it to get their games that they've published on iOS, Android, Windows 8. They'll easily be able to take those games over to Xbox One now. We would like to be on the game partition, which is the one where you have full access to all the resources of the Xbox One. That involves talks with Microsoft, which we are doing. I would like to see full support for the Microsoft holographic SDK, and so we can make HoloLens apps. So one of the samples that they showed during build was a virtual pet that was sitting on the floor. I'd like to be able to do that with MonoGame. The MonoGame Universal apps will already work with HoloLens as a standard app that you can start up, you can place on the wall. MonoGame apps will already run as that. As for other consoles, nothing we can announce at this time. We have had various talks with various companies. It all comes down to time and money.
So you're on PS4 and you're basically on Xbox, and you can't announce anything about other consoles because there's no. Because apart from those two,
it is public knowledge that we have been talking to Nintendo. That was leaked last year, I think.
But that isn't anything you could possibly comment on.
But there's nothing else we can say about that. So where is it going for on the software side as opposed to the platform side? We don't have 100% coverage of the XNA 4 API yet. There's some of the more little used APIs that we haven't implemented yet. And occasionally someone comes up on the forum and say, this doesn't work. Like, yes, we will implement that. You are probably the first person in 3 years to ask for that feature. So, of course, we start off with the features that everyone uses, and it's only the outline features that we are yet to implement. We've already started going beyond the scope of the XNA for APIs. So we've added multi-window support into the Windows version. There's several other things that we're planning to introduce soon. I just can't think of what they are right now. But we're not going to restrict ourselves to XNA 4 API. We do plan to go beyond that. And one of those things is supporting DirectX 12, Vulkan, and Apple's Metal graphics APIs. They are a different way of, well, you use those in a very different way to the way that older graphics APIs were used. XNA was basically designed around the DirectX 9 API. We're trying to work out now how best do we support the highly multi-threaded and command buffer driven APIs that are coming out now. And who knows what else will come out. So we're always looking at what's happening and how can we use that with MonoGame. As for working with the MonoGame source, it has been built 100% by volunteers in their spare time. There's been no companies working on it. There's been no one's been paid for their time on this. Anyone is welcome to make a contribution, whether it's a feature or a bug fix. And that goes for everyone from a single dev making just one fix. We had Microsoft submit Windows Phone 8.1 support last year, and they all went through the same GitHub pull request. And that's it. Thank you for listening. There's contact details there. And does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. So I want to support some new console. How big a thing is that to actually then go off and do that? How long would that take?
The biggest part of that is at the moment getting the C# runtime or the .NET runtime onto that platform. Things have changed recently with Microsoft open sourcing a whole bunch of the .NET system. So there are core libraries are actually already running on Linux and Mac. So it may be easier now. We haven't actually looked deeply into the Microsoft open source efforts yet.
Oh, so you're only running on top of Mono at the moment, you're running on top of their open source?
On PlayStation 4, it's running on Xamarin PS4. Right. So Xamarin actually developed the runtime for it, and if you want to release on PlayStation 4, you buy a license for Xamarin PS4, and then MonoGame is actually free. Sony have actually made that free.
So what about performance? How does .NET code run on these other machines?
Well, we haven't had anyone pushing it to the limit yet, but
like casual games that you've...
most of the games that were in the video are running fine on PS4, and there's no performance issues yet.
Mobile's probably more where people would be pushing already, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the flight sim that was on that video, that was iOS and Android.
That's pretty good for Android, so you must be doing okay if you can run that.
Mm. Yeah, we haven't had any real issues with performance on any decent platform.
Actually, about the only platform, so to speak, I could see missing from all of it in a sense is anyone looked at VR? Does it work with VR headsets at all?
No one on the team has a Rift.
Right. Have you guys?
I said I'd like to get it on HoloLens.
Yeah.
As an actual HoloLens app, which I'll have to take a look at that holographic SDK and try to get a HoloLens unit when they become available. But as for Rift, I don't see any major issues. You might need to write some C# bindings for any libraries that they require you to use.
The biggest pain in the ass with something like Rift is just that it injects itself into the very core of your render loop, basically. and the way you have to manage like the guts of your main render loop have to be able to sort of split itself into the two halves and do it in a way that works with their rather quirky, I find, APIs. So I guess that's going to be like, with your stuff, you kind of making almost direct calls to an equivalent of DirectX 9 for that stuff.
Yeah.
So
actually, the draw loop actually just boils down to it's issuing a whole lot of draw primitive calls.
right.
And there's some wrappers around that, like Sprite Batch, which is designed to for highly efficient 2D rendering. There's the model class, which is essentially just a container of vertex and index buffers.
And does you actually control your own render order for like what order models could, like you'd set up?
Absolutely, you have full control over the whole render process.
Well, that probably means that supporting a VR headset's probably mostly down to the end user then, anyway,
Yeah.
rather than the framework. Yeah.
I don't know of anyone who's tried it yet, but I'm keen to see if anyone does try to use it.
Cool.
Thank you.